Welcome everyone, and good afternoon, and why not say good evening for all of those who's going to be joining us later on to this special moment of our week, a special moment of our day during the Saturdays when we meet to have our public meetings to speak about an elevating and helpful topic to break our routines from the mundane things, the worries of our lives, and to connect with higher mentors, our mentors, one another's mentors, and to connect with one another, right? So, welcome everyone, and happy Saturday to you. Today, we, as usual, have another special talk with Kirsten, talking about times of health and talking about liberation, a topic or a chapter of the book Times of Health and Conscientiousness by the Spirit Joanna de Angelis through the hands of the medium Divaldo Franco. Before we pass the word to Kirsten to talk about this amazing chapter, we would like to read a passage of the book Happy Life and pray together so we can acclimate ourselves to this moment, to the environment in which we come together to partake. Joanna de Angelis says the following: when a man decides to modify his moral conduct for the better, he seems to face a general conspiracy against his desire for improvement. Everything changes and is out of control. The least little things become complicated, and the rhythm of events changes for the worse for some time. This state of affairs leads the person who would improve himself to retreat and to give up. Every transference modifies what is usual. In the area of moral actions, the reaction is the greater because one is penetrating to the root of evil to cut it out. This leads to the growth of new and balanced customs. Do not abandon your goals of morality and inner growth because of the first difficulties you encounter. On this note, for all of us who is trying to lead a better life, a better condition to all of us, we pray for one another. And as we pray also, let us pray for those who may not want to change so that they can also receive the guidance to enter this new stage of our lives. This way, we invite everyone to raise our thoughts, our feelings to our dear Creator, so that we can connect with our mentors, the mentors of our homes, of the environments in which we partake, so that each one of us can grow, so that each one of us can connect with the message here tonight. We ask you, dear Lord, that our dear friend Kirsten can be a vessel of light to receive from up above the teachings, the feelings, and express towards us as we express towards her our gratitude for the work, for allowing herself to enter our lives. And we also dedicate this moment to our brothers and sisters who are in need, those who are in need of help, guidance, encouragement to continue in their endeavors, whether in the physical body or perhaps waiting to receive one or recently discarnated. May we all share just this joyful moment with our hearts full of joy and content for being with one another, still virtually, but knowing that we're all sharing a good message, a good moment in our lives. May your guidance, protection be with us now and ever, and so be it. So as we were saying earlier, we are giving continuation, right, Kirsten, to this amazing book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness. It's I have to catch myself saying conscientiousness, not just conscious. Just correct myself all the time there. So Kirsten, today we'll talk about affirmations and Liberation, which I believe is the chapter of the title of the chapter. So, with no further ado, please, Kirsten, take us away.
Thank you, Leo. And hello to everyone watching us on the web, whether you're following us through YouTube or our Facebook page. Hello, good evening. We are jumping back into this marvelous book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness. We're on chapter 4. And don't worry if you haven't been with us before, or if you haven't watched the previous videos, that's okay. These chapters can stand alone. It's not a novel. It is a chapter book, and each individual chapter has its own worth and beauty, but obviously can be studied and should be together with each individual chapter. But this particular chapter, chapter 4, entitled Liberation, like every other chapter in this book, Joanna always starts us out with affirmations, which are so important, which are a great tool for centering ourselves, for kind of giving us this shower of blessings, if you will. Hopefully we shower on the daily and, take care of our physical hygiene. But it's just as important to take care of our emotional and spiritual hygiene as well, and our mental. So affirmations are part of that way that we can do that, to really live with intention and to live intently and really put it out there for the universe. But we wanted to mention something before we even started our talk today. We heard this, was a brief, I think it was even like a 30-second snippet of a video that Mansion of the Way, Mansão do Caminho, for those of you who are familiar with the Portuguese name, which is the famous Divaldo Franco. It's where it's his great charity work. It's where he resides. It's where so much beautiful things happen in the location in Brazil. I digress. The point is that they have a YouTube channel, and he put out this very short video, and it was simple but beautiful, and just reminding us that there are millions upon millions of spirits that want to reincarnate on this earth. Yes, this earth that is going through a pandemic, this earth that is full of trials and tribulations, this earth that still is dealing with starving people and children in the world, where perversity happens, and any slew of things. If you could just reflect on your own personal life, which often we might think, gosh, my life is so hard, these things are so difficult. And that's totally valid. We all go through hard times. But there are so many people that would love, so many spirits that would love to reincarnate and be in our position. Yes, that want your problems, that want my problems. Hopefully that puts things into perspective for us. It's so easy for us to get caught up in all of our struggles and everything that we're going through, but to put it into perspective that, wait a second, there are millions of other souls that would love the opportunity that we have now, that we are getting to work on ourselves, to work on our evolution, our spirituality, to evolve. We know that progress, the law of progress, it's inevitable. It's always in flow, in motion. But it is here in this reincarnation, this opportunity, that we should truly cherish, even the hard times. Yes, we know that that's crazy and almost blasphemy, especially for those of us that endure hardships and go through really hard times, especially when you're in the thick of it. Just to put things into perspective, for us to be reminded of those types of things. And this book is filled with ways for us to manage our emotional, mental, and physical lives, to live our best life. So Joanna, like I said, with every chapter starts out with positive affirmation. So if you are joining us over this live stream or the recorded version, I want you to take a second and just settle yourself. Anything that you were having in your hands, if you have us open on your smartphone and or digital device, and you have other things open and simultaneously as well, we just ask you to step away from that for a second. Just look at this screen and take this 5 minutes just for yourself to do this. This is the gift you're going to give yourself for the next few minutes. Okay, so I want you guys to join me. And hello to everyone that's joining and writing in the chat. Hello, thank you for joining. And join us with these affirmations that Joanna has in the beginning of this chapter. She starts out, and we want you to read this out loud to yourself, out loud or to yourself, depending on where you are. Divine force pervades my mind and body. Divine force pervades my mind and body. I have been reborn into a painful situation as a lesson for my evolution. I have been reborn into a painful situation as a lesson for my evolution. People are as they please, but I am on a perennial search for harmony. People are as they please, but I am on a perennial search for harmony. The evil others have done to me will become an asset. The evil others have done to me will become an asset. It was not their intention to stigmatize me. It was not their intention to stigmatize me. In fact, they themselves were victims and did not know any better. In fact, they themselves were victims and did not know any better. Thus, I love them and am free to achieve my goals of perfection. Thus, I love them and I'm free to achieve my goals of perfection. Now I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just one more time. In through your nose. And as you take a breath out through your mouth, I want you to give that sigh of relief. Just releasing all that tension. Let us empty our cup. And let us just be ready to receive the message that Joanna wants to share with us in this chapter, entitled Liberation. She starts out by reminding us about negative and mental charges. And she says, negative and mental charges have the devastating power to disrupt one's psychological and physical inner workings. If they have become a habit, it takes enormous effort to unravel them from the subtle tangles of one's life-giving energy fields. Negative and mental charges have devastating power to disrupt one's psychological and physical inner workings. Let's just take that in for just a second here. And let's give it the time that it deserves for us to take that in and digest that for a second. And let us not think about all of the people in our lives who are negative or pessimistic or what have you. Let us reel it back in like a fisherman, okay? Reel yourself back in, and let's do a self-reflection of all the times we've had negative thoughts, feelings, and think about how that has impacted our life, your life, my life thus far. And when it becomes a habit, Joanna reminds us it's very difficult to undo. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult to undo all that negative thinking because it becomes entangled with the very inner workings of who we are. She says unpleasant memories, perturbing thoughts, toxic ideas, and yesterday's depressing utterances all surface as constant complaints, stored up resentments, pent up anger, self deprecation, and lovelessness, a combination of destructive ingredients that ultimately unsettle individuals who allow themselves to fall prey to them. So, a lot of these, and there's many different types as she mentions here, whether it's an unpleasant memory, thoughts that are disturbing, toxic ideas, are things that we've said that were depressing in the past. They resurface, they will manifest in this negative behavior. And they make us unsettled. But it's because we're tuning into them. And she says individuals who allow themselves to fall prey to them when we're not being vigilant. It's not that we're bad people. No one's 100% evil, even the most evilest of evil people. In the spirits book, they tell us everyone has a little bit of that divine within them. But we're not talking about the extreme versions here. That's why it's so important for us to be vigilant with our thoughts and what we nurture. Is it work? It absolutely is. It could be even mentally tiring to be constantly vigilant, to be intentional with what I'm feeding myself, because a lot of the time we're on autopilot and requires more energy, at least in the beginning, till we form better habits, requires a lot of energy for us to think differently and better. She goes on to say, one cannot avoid having been born into an aggressive home, amongst hostile people, under grievous moral and socioeconomic injections. This reality has its roots in the past, and complaining only makes it worse. It does not eliminate it. So, yes, it's easy to fall into negativity. And yes, we can be surrounded and born into a family that is negative. And negative we will say it's an umbrella word in a sense, because it can encompass so many things, unpleasant memories, or just things that you are enduring on a day-to-day basis, experiences that you're enduring that could be, as Joanna calls it, aggressive or amongst hostile people. But the perspective that she is bringing to us that we need to have is that the reasons why we're born into that family has its purpose. And that complaining about it only makes it worse. We're not saying, she isn't saying, we don't believe that we should not acknowledge wrongdoing or acknowledge toxicity. Of course, we should. And do our best to work on ourselves and to keep peace with inside ourselves, and not talking about situations where we find ourselves in abusive situations, but just situations, because if it's an abusive situation, obviously we want to take the appropriate steps to protect ourselves, our family, children, etc., etc. But just simply complaining about it, just complaining about it to your friends or others or whomever, to yourself, doesn't change anything. It makes it worse because we're ruminating in those thoughts. We're just giving it life and giving it more life and more life. And there actually was this study done, published in the APA, PsychNet, American Psychological Association. And I'll read for you briefly, then I'll explain real quick. In this particular study, and I've marked it down below, the actual title of the study is actually called "Why Do My Thoughts Feel So Bad?" It's part of the title. So in this research, let me just read this excerpt for you and then we'll explain. It says that higher levels of rumination were also associated with higher rumination inertia, pointing toward more habitual rumination also being associated with prolonged rumination. We found reciprocal associations between rumination and negative affect, while providing new insights into the dynamics between the two processes. In other words, in layman's terms, they found that people that focus on negativity, it's also associated with people that are stuck in that negativity. And it's also associated with people that just have an overall negative affect. They think negative anyway. They're stuck ruminating, which just is a fancy word to say constantly thinking about all the negativity, and you can just get stuck in that. So it's like this 3-part process where I'm thinking about all the negative things. I'm stuck there in that negative thing, like I'm stuck in sort of like a vortex of negativity. And we know a whole lot about that type of, from the Andrea Louise collections, a lot of different type of negative, energy we can surround ourselves with. It becomes like this never-ending loop. There are cases of it as well. So the research is plainly showing us that the very things that we already know happen are in existence. So the more we think about negativity, the more we continue just to ruminate on those thoughts and continue to think about it. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help. It's something different to utilize a therapeutic technique to work through emotions, and it's something else to ruminate, to complain, and to be stagnant. She goes on to say, indulging in deplorable memories become a form of masochism that strengthens what one cannot eliminate, even though there are means for overcoming and forgetting them. For those of you who are not familiar with masochism, it's the enjoyment of bringing pain to ourselves. Indulging in deplorable memories. You might ask yourself, who does this? Who would want to do that? Why would you want to continuously think about things that are negative, that were horrific or horrible that happened to you, or maybe a family member or a friend, or you were part of an experience? But the actual understanding of trauma, and if you do even a little bit of trauma work or study on how trauma works in the brain, we know that sometimes, our mind goes back there. Even sometimes we become comfortable in a weird sense because it's what we know, especially for people who go through severe trauma. But for us to keep going back and ruminating in those thoughts and to continuously thinking about it, it is a form of masochism because all it's doing is hurting us. And if we pay enough attention to ourselves, how we feel, be more conscientious of our thought processes, you'll be able to distinguish when we are indulging in these memories, when we're thinking about it constantly, even though there are ways to overcome them and even forget them, even though truly we don't forget, it just gets put in a different place within our mind. But it allows us to overcome it, to look at it from a different perspective, to go through healing instead of being stuck and this inertia. She goes on to say, every time one relies on self-pity in times of failure, one gets more comfortable with it and holds on to it out of habit. It's truly scary what can become a habit. You do something enough, it will become second nature. It will become a habit. Oftentimes, that may be something negative, because for millennia, for many lifetimes, we've been having a lot of negative tendencies or negative habits, but they've just perpetuated from one life to the next. So then when we want to get out of that loop, it's very hard. It's difficult. It takes enormous effort, as she says, to get out of that thought process, to unravel everything. So if we find ourselves in that situation where we're in the middle of unraveling, hold tight, keep doing the work. Things will get better. But now moving forward, let's be more conscientious of what types of thoughts we are feeding and also working on our feelings and emotions and working through them, not trying to repress or push down or be angry at ourselves for feeling a certain way. But let us embrace and love all parts of ourselves. And as we accept it, then we can work through it. But the more we deny it and try to push it away, the more it stays. She goes on to say, thus, to turn things around, the decision to be happy is urgent. Now, let's not get it twisted or confused. Because when she says the decision to be happy is urgent, that's not to say that I make a decision, I want to be happy, and then miraculously, like out of Cinderella, bippity boppity boo, things are going to turn around. Everything's going to become as you wish it to be. No. But you start your new journey towards happiness and you make more conscious decisions for your happiness. And to not focus on the negativity, to not keep going back to the negative memories, to start fresh, to start new. In the Spirit's book, they remind us of something very interesting. Now, Kardec asks this question, do we have our own thoughts plus others that are suggested to us? And I'm going to read the answer and then we'll discuss it here in 1 second. And the Spirit's answer, your soul's a spirit who thinks by itself. Nevertheless, you must have noticed that many thoughts occur to you at the same time with regards to the same subject, and that they frequently contradict one another. Well, they are always a combination of your own ideas and other spirits' ideas, and this is what renders you uncertain. You have several ideas within your mind battling it out with each other. Now, the reason we bring this question is that, and the question and answer, is because as we're doing the work on ourselves, we can be bombarded by so many different thoughts and ideas that come to our mind. But one of the ways, and as a sidebar, the rest of the questions that follow this particular question of 460 in the Spirit's book, they also talk about, is it important for us to have to distinguish between which thoughts are mine, which are someone else's, am I being inspired or negatively impacted? And they say, basically at the end, Kardec gives a message saying, if God wanted their way to be, to distinguish between our thoughts and those of a spirit influencing us, God would have created a way. In the same way that God has created a specific way for us to distinguish between night and day. But because God hasn't created that, there's a reason, and we shouldn't focus on whose thought is it anyway. And just focus on doing our best, choosing the right decisions, making the right decisions, feeding our thoughts, feeding our mind uplifting things, not having false positivity, but really feeding our soul things that are uplifting. And that includes making the urgent decision to be happy. Like, I want to be happy. You can say it to yourself, I want to be happy. That's all that I want. I just want to be happy. Let me take the steps I need to take to get there. Joanna goes on to say, reincarnation has brought you into a home that you consider inadequate for your progress, causing you to suffer. How many times did we feel that way? Perhaps you yourself chose it some time ago in order to adapt the reparative process. So we ourselves, we know this within Spiritism, we ourselves, and prior to us being reincarnated, knew of our struggles. With some exception, we knew what our struggles were, and we knew what we needed to do to redress and rectify and redo past mistakes. So we knew that, okay, I'm going to have to be born around these people who either I harmed or they harmed me, or whatever the situation is. It's a difficult situation. So we knew that was a part of our reparative process, that we were going to come back into this family. Again, there are exceptions to that where people don't have as much access, and that's a talk for a different day. But something for us to think about. She goes on to say, everyone is linked to the individuals they need in order to evolve. So if we were to take a look around our family members, the biological home that we were born into, with few exception, where some people are born into families where they have great affinity, but we would say 50% or more, give or take, have struggles on some varying degree. There's usually like a gradient. Some is not so much, some is really a lot. So we're meant to come back with the same people that we are linked to, for us to evolve, for us to grow from. So, in other words, I'm in the family I need to grow, to progress. I might not be in the family that I want or like, but if we try to have the perspective, like the story that we shared earlier today, or the snippet from Divaldo Franco's video, there are spirits waiting in like the longest line possible to reincarnate on Earth, millions. And here we are in a place they would love to be, so they can progress. Because ultimately we want to get to that happy state where we're a happy spirit, according to Kardec. In order for us to evolve and reach that more blissful state, we have to redress and fix these situations that we're in, or fix the problems that we may have created. So bless the hardships. It's hard to bless it when we're going through it, we know. But bless it. So thank you, God, for trusting me with this. She goes on to say, even so, remaining imprisoned by such tormenting circumstances is an accommodating attitude toward the negative and the perturbing, whereas there are invaluable means for liberation. Remaining imprisoned by such tormenting circumstances is an accommodating attitude toward the negative and the perturbing, whereas there are invaluable means for liberation. So it's very easy for us to just say, you know what? this life is hard, I'm just going to be negative. It's very easy to take on that persona, that perspective, just throw your hands up in the air and say, you know what, it is what it is. This is my life, whatever. But there are means for us to be liberated. Maybe not always necessarily from the physical conditions, but liberation comes from within us. Whether it's disconnecting from that negativity, unraveling our own negative thought processes and ideas, mindsets. So we're again disconnecting from that negative energy that might be all around us. But we can disconnect. And she reminds us that problems arise in order to be solved. So if something is popping up for us, it's for us to address it. Now, we might look at our emotions or feelings as problems, right? Because oftentimes that's what bothers us. It's not always just the act itself of some negative situation, but it's how we ourselves are reacting to it. We get frustrated, we get angry, we get upset, we don't accept the situation. So we have to work on those emotions, feelings, our perspectives. So those problems arise in order to be solved because we can't change anybody else. That's not what she's saying here. We cannot change anyone but ourselves. And by the sheer way of how God created life and how energy works, the more we work on ourselves, we inevitably, in a positive way, infect others. When we make this internal movement to change, we begin to affect others, whether they see it or not. And when we have problems that arise within families, social settings, what have you, it's happening because something needs to be solved. And that's when communication, talking, civility, forgiveness, compassion, love thy neighbor is really important. Because in order for us to communicate, we have to be civil, respectful, kind. But in order for us to even make that movement, oftentimes we have our own emotions to deal with that overwhelm us, whether it's anger, frustration, or disgust, or what have you, or being hurt. It could be any hundreds of emotions. She goes on to say, difficulties are tests that challenge the value of one's knowledge and one's ability to persevere. Difficulties are tests that challenge the value of one's knowledge and one's ability to persevere. It is like an emotional walk up Mount Everest. You can probably Google or look on YouTube people's preparation and journey, walk up Mount Everest or any other slew of large mountains there are in the world that people take on, or to walk the Appalachian Trail. All beautiful and fine. Nature is beautiful. But imagine having to do that within yourself. It's much more difficult in some ways. But that's the point. Because in there are our tests that challenge the value of our knowledge and our ability to persevere, to keep working at it, to keep going, to not give up, to have hope, have faith. And they say it's darkest right before the dawn. It's a way for us to really cultivate our faith, hope, and recognize our own strength and ability to overcome any obstacle that comes our way, and to fortify ourselves. Joanna goes on to say, if you would rather feel sorry for yourself, no one can help you. If you would rather feel sorry for yourself, no one can help you. It's a choice. Just like it's a choice to be happy. Again, reminder, choosing to be happy is not a miraculous event that all of a sudden fixes all your problems, fixes all of the issues that we've had, or you have, or I have. It's just a decision, like a road we choose to walk down. We still have a lot of road to walk, and tons of things we're going to experience. But you set your mind to, I want to be happy. This is my main goal. Not in a selfish way, in a self-indulgence, negative way, but real happiness, true happiness, connecting with self, with my creator, and not being lost in the superfluous of things. So just know, if we choose to feel sorry for ourselves, woe is me, no one can help you. Not until you're ready. Not until you want to change. She goes on to say, resentment, fear, and complaints about the past will make you even more dependent on the circumstances in which you unconsciously find support, so that you do not have to struggle for the restoration of peace and the attainment of joy. Resentment, fear, and complaints about the past. Who knew? Makes us dependent, because we get some sort of unconscious support. So we don't have to struggle. I stay stuck in my self-pity. I resent people or things that have happened to me. I complain about it and I'm fearful. I get stuck in this inertia, this rumination, and we get stuck there. And then it's easy. We don't have to work to better ourselves, because woe is me, I'm a victim. Again, putting aside the idea of it's something different to utilize therapeutic techniques, whether it's working with a therapist, meditation, yoga, other things, to work through our emotions and feelings, and having the desire to work through them, find self-acceptance, self-love, enlighten ourselves. That's a different pathway. But simply throwing up our hands and saying, this is just what I am. I'm a product of my environment and my circumstance. That's it. Well, then that's the easy road, because it means that you are saying that's all you're going to be, although you're not happy, but you're also not taking the other road, which is the harder road, to work on ourselves. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it can be scary. Yes, a lot of emotions can come up, but that's the beauty of it. We begin to discover how deep we truly are. You cannot and must not incorporate into your life the harmful predictions, the vulgar or depressing utterances that others have directed at you, or the verbal, moral, and physical aggressions of which you have become a victim. And let's think about that real quick. Because today's day and age, we to go and see a psychic or just someone to read your palm or any of the above. If someone says, oh, well, I'm a medium and I see XYZ, and sometimes they give negative things. They say negative things. Well, this XYZ is going to happen to you and it's going to be, this horrible thing. Or someone hurls insults at you and says, well, this is what you're going to be. This is all you ever amount to. And sometimes they're physically violent in varying degrees. And we become this victim of this horribleness from somebody else. But Joanna's reminding us, don't incorporate that into our life. The insults, harmful predictions, whether it's from someone that's reading your palm or just someone in your life that says to you, you're never going to be anything. Don't take that in to yourself as a reality, because you are not what other people say you are. Joanna reminds us, that is all in the past. It's done, spilled milk and all. Nevertheless, diverting their harmful effects is a task you must fulfill. So, yes, she says we can acknowledge what's said is done, but we still have to work on whatever emotions come up, whatever feelings come up, whatever parts of us are presenting in response to that negativity, whether it's physical or not. We still have to deal with that. It's still on us to deal with it. It's part of our advancement. It's part of our training to become better, to become stronger, to get to know ourselves and to repair things in previous existences that we don't even recall anymore. We don't even remember. It's not at the forefront of our minds anymore. Like maybe it was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 100 lifetimes ago. And although we generally give steps towards the end of our talks, but we wanted to bring this here now because up until this point, and for the most of this book, and like a lot of Joanna's books, it's a psychological series, we wanted just to talk a little bit about how to deal with the emotions/feelings or parts of us that come up that are difficult to manage. Oftentimes either we're told or either we've learned through family, the way we were brought up, people that we're around, we learn to either try to cover our emotions, and that could be through food, it could be through drugs, hopefully not, or it could just be through other habits that may appear to not be so bad, but other things where we just push down our emotions, say, I don't want to think about that, I don't want to deal with it, I'm going to just turn my mind to something else, and I'm not going to deal with that. Instead, here are just a couple of ways that you can learn to mindfully deal with difficult emotions or parts of you that are coming up. So, number 1, turn toward your emotions with acceptance. Become aware of the emotion and identify where you feel it in your body. So it's first acknowledging that part of that emotion that presented itself. Instead of hating that part of you, let's accept it and let's learn from it. We identify and label the emotion. Say, okay, this is anger, this is anxiety, this is fear, this is XYZ. And don't deny that emotion, accept it. We might have parts of us that want to say, oh gosh, why do I feel that angry? Why do I feel like that? I don't want to feel like that. Part of self-love and self-acceptance is accepting these parts of us that present these emotions, these feelings that pop up. That even sometimes we ourselves are shocked, didn't even know that we had that inside of ourselves. But also realizing the impermanence of our emotions, excuse me. Even if the emotion feels overwhelming, try to remind yourself it will pass. The next step is also very important. Inquire and investigate. Ask yourself, what triggered me? Why do I feel this way? It's that curiosity of wanting to know, to get to know ourselves. Joanna often talks about our shadow self, the parts of us that we keep hidden, whether it's in our unconscious mind or somewhere way down, repressed down in our mind and soul and heart. But what we need to do is get curious about those parts of ourselves that perhaps we've feared for so long. And emotional management and the management of our feelings and all those things really is a huge way for us to manage our life, manage our stress, and manage to find happiness. Because we have lots of different parts of us that can present, or thoughts, or what have you. And like in the spirits book, we shouldn't sit there with our thoughts and feelings and think, well, which feelings are mine, which feelings are not, but rather think about what is good. And let us investigate. Ask yourself why you feel that way. Now, in certain circumstances of trauma or severe trauma or things of that nature, those require sometimes often more techniques and therapeutic approaches. But let's just say for everyday comings and goings in our minds and experiences, or with the help of a therapist, we can become more curious and investigate our own self. And number 6 of this is let go of the need to control your emotions. Be open to the outcome of your emotions and what unfolds. That does not mean that allowing your emotions to run amok, to just accept the fact your emotions are crazy, they're going to be all over the place, I don't know what I'm thinking. No. But accept yourself, that there are parts of yourself that you may not even be aware of that are going to be triggered by different things in our lives, especially by family. Obviously, we've already stated, we know this, that we were born back into the same families and individuals and people and circumstances that we need to grow. Is it hard? Absolutely, it's hard. And it's trying. That's why it's so important to have a support system as well. But to remind ourselves of all these things is super important, that things are arising so they can be solved. Joanna's words, not mine. Her closing remarks in this chapter, she says, you know you are not what they have accused you of. But if due to your psychological fragility, you have assimilated their imprecations into your personality and believed them, break the shackles and exercise your freedom. We are not what others accuse us of. And if for some reason, Joanna says psychological fragility, if we've taken in, assimilated those words from others, we need to break those shackles and exercise our freedom from that. She says, you are a rough stone in need of polishing. Even though you may be rough on the outside, you have the brightness of the stars on the inside, and it is up to you to release it. Start this new process in your life right now. That's when she says we should make the decision to be happy, not because it's a miraculous thing that's going to happen And, like I said, the wave of the wand, it's not like Harry Potter or Cinderella where the fairy godmother comes and says bippity boppity boo and things are going to miraculously change. No, it's a decision to begin today to change, to start on a new road. We can begin that today wherever we are. Doesn't matter what circumstance we find ourselves in, what we've done, does not matter. We can begin today to do better. She says, give yourself the chance to prove to yourself how much you have and you will succeed. It's very gratifying to overcome a hardship and realize, wow, I'm a lot stronger than I thought I was. I didn't know I had that strength within me. We do. Even if we can't even visualize it, we do. It's there, like a seed, waiting to germinate, waiting for us to water it. And even if you think to yourself, well, Kirsten, I just don't believe it, I don't see it. Well, that's why meditation is really good. We can begin to meditate and visualize the strength within us, these seeds that we're planting inside of ourselves. Visualize that part of us that's strong, that is embracing ourselves, that is giving us the support that we need, we desire to be our best selves. She goes on to finish this chapter. It says, experience the pleasure of rebuilding your future, and you will start being happy right away. And it's true. As soon as we start rebuilding our lives, make the shift, we already begin to feel a change. Again, is there going to be miraculous things happening around us on their own for no reason? No, it's going to come because of the work that we do. But it's going to be blessed because we are finally getting back on track and connecting with the ultimate truth that we are children of God, that we can liberate ourselves, break free of the chains. We don't have to be stuck in this emotional roller coaster or this negativity. We can get out of it. We can be freed of it. It just takes a little bit of effort on our part. And also, it takes us taking care of ourselves. We don't just mean in the physical sense, like, yes, going to the gym is important, eating healthy is important, doing all those physical things that you need to do to take care of your physical body, personal hygiene, and all that stuff, getting good sleep. All those things are super important. But self-care, meditating, and acknowledging the divine within us and connecting that and recharging that spiritual battery we have inside of ourselves. If you find yourself with low energy, it may just be because you're not connecting with your divine self, your purpose, and you need to reevaluate perhaps many different aspects. Maybe it's diet, lack of sleep or enough sleep, or issues that are bothering us that we need to address. But one of the great ways for us to just sort of kickstart, like, where do I start? Where do I begin? It's always recommended to just begin right where you are. Whatever's most pressing, whatever issue is most bothersome, to work through that emotion, see what it has to teach you, what you have to learn. But these are also just some tips for some self-care ideas that we can do so in a healthy, uplifting fashion. Go outside for a walk. Nature, and Joanna reminds us of us, and many other spiritist books as well, nature has healing properties. Take a walk out in nature. If you can, go barefoot in your backyard and just take a moment to enjoy the nature around you. And if you don't have one around you, then I'm sure that there's some sort of park or friend's house you could go to, possibly. Parks are generally free. So you can go for a nice walk. Do something creative, whatever floats your boat. Or simply watch the sky at night or during the day. Hopefully you don't have too much light pollution where you are, so you're able to actually see the stars at night. If not, go visit someone in the countryside. There's less light pollution. You can enjoy the beauty of the sky. Start a bucket list. And this is sort of akin to setting a list of goals you have for yourself, in a sense. But a bucket list are all the things you want to do before you discarnate, before you die. Talk to an old friend. 10 minutes of meditation, practice yoga, turn off, disconnect from social media, from the TV, play some music, cook a healthy meal, read a chapter of a book. These are all just some basic ideas for us to start where we are, start taking care of ourselves. So we can connect with our mentor, we can connect with our spirit guides. And also this really great little added benefit of breathing. They call it the 4-7-8 breathing. 4-7-8. You inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7 seconds, and exhale for 8 seconds. Repeat it 3 times. You can write this down. You could take a picture with your phone. You can find this all over Pinterest, Google, what have you. It's just a method of breathing. It's a great mindfulness technique, which has been proven to really help our overall stress management, and just a way for us to stop, recenter, and ground ourselves. So this now brings us to the end of our talk for today, the end of this chapter, this beautiful, wonderful chapter that Joanna brings to us. Liberation. If you don't have the book, Times of Health and Conscientiousness, you're missing out. It's a wonderful, enlightening book. So I thank you all so much for staying with us during this entire talk. And I'm just going to stop sharing here for a second, and we'll join you guys back in the main area. Hello, Leo.
Hello, Kirsten, and thank you for this great reminder, right? Talking about liberation. When we, at least for myself, looking, at the chapter, at first, we always think of liberation from the things outside. And naturally, it does happen, right? The things that we don't want to do anymore, that we don't want to see it anymore in our lives. But it's Joanna de Angelis talks about a liberation that starts within us, right? We need to liberate ourselves with all the things that is within in order for us to disconnect from the things that we are attracting to ourselves. So, great reminder, lovely chapter. I would just like to connect and acknowledge the hellos that we received here from Marisa, from Christy, Daniel, and everyone else who actually said hello. Aloysio also say hello to us. All of those who are connecting with us, and acknowledging those who will be connecting with us in the future as well when they stream this lovely talk that you brought to us today. As always, it's important for us to get into the questions, because there's a lot that we can develop from these questions as well. Sometimes we think that, should I ask this or not? Do ask. And I would like to share here. I don't know why I cannot share today when I'm clicking on it. All right, there it is.
There it is. Yeah.
Yasko asks, in drug addiction, there is a reward mechanism to sustain it. Similarly, American Psychological Society states that if one stays in negativity long, it is very difficult to reverse or get out from that, like an addiction. Is there a reward mechanism going on too? How does this pleasurable reward work in negativity? Very good question.
Very good question, Yasko. Yes, there is a level of pleasure or enjoyment in that staying in the loop of negativity, Even within obsessions, they say that there are, to some degree or another, there's someone who is being obsessed, something that you're gaining from it. Now, everyone's idea of pleasure, um, things that bring them joy is very unique and very different. And oftentimes we don't equate things like negative thinking as a source of pleasure or enjoyment, but the human psyche is quite complex, and each individual is even more complex. So if we can probably only say to keep it simple, the best way we can understand it is that there is just some sort of pleasure that is derived, they're getting from it. There's something, maybe not pleasure in the usual definition that we understand, but there's something that they're getting out of that, whether it's they're feeling sorry for themselves and they're garnering sympathy from others, or they're staying in that negative loop, which gives them an excuse not to change. And we're not saying that everyone has the same reasoning. Everybody's very unique, very different. And we hope this isn't going to be used to, shoot arrows at anyone in an energetic sense. But, really for us to do that self-evaluation, like, why am I continuing? What am I getting from this? What am I gaining? And what can I learn from this? So yeah, Yasko, that's a beautiful way to put it, because definitely there is that reward system in our mind, that negative and positive feedback loop that definitely happens in each one of us. So yeah, that was a great question. Thank you, Yasko.
It is, and it's always important for us to connect with the idea that whenever we are changing, right? We're, as Joanna de Angelis mentioned those chapter as well, in the chapter that we read from Happy Life, whenever we try to change something, there will be a different reward mechanism, right? That we need to pay attention to. If we get out of some kind of addiction, that we had a reward, that we were experiencing a reward, we also have to make sure that we are replacing with something that will give us a reward. That's okay, but that's something that is fulfilling, right? That is not of the world, but that's going to be something that's going to help us in the future as well, and allow us to help others as well. So it's always good to pay attention to that. And then I would like to share what Daniel brought here. What would you say, and I asked Daniel to actually bring this to the screen, what would you say from those who think that death will end up with their suffering?
Yeah, I think, Daniel, for those who think that death is going to end all of their suffering, I mean, it's an illusion like many other illusions we have in life. I mean, if someone is persistent in their belief that there's nothing after death, and they're not open to believing anything else, much like when Joanna said, if you want to feel sorry for yourself, no one can help you. So if you want to believe what you want to believe and not be open to anything else or any other possibilities, there's not a whole lot that we can do as a friend or someone that's other than praying for them and trying to talk to them. But for those, if someone were to come up to us and say, well, I'm just going to end it all, or, well, we die anyway, so what's the point of even working on ourselves? There's nothing afterwards. Well, there is, because even as we have breath within us, we can make our lives better. Not only our lives, but the lives of other people that we don't even know that we can touch in the most positive and uplifting way. How many times have those, in your neighborhood or your work setting, or even in your families, have said something uplifting to you, or have had a kind disposition that truly made a huge difference in how you viewed life or how you viewed a certain situation? We can be that inspiring, that catalyst for someone else, if we would just be open to the idea of being more positive, or living a life that has more fulfilling things in it, not with the just the topical, superficial. If for those who are materialists and only believe in that, there's not a whole lot we can do other than us living our best life, us being the living example of everything we believe in, all the good and love and all those wonderful, lofty ideas that we believe in. Let us be the living book. So when someone comes near us, it's like they're reading the gospel because they're reading it in us, through our example. Are we going to be perfect? No, we're not. No, not at this stage in life. Not in this planet. No. So we need to have self-compassion and be understanding of ourselves that we are going to falter, we are going to fall sometimes. We are going to go through hardships. Everyone does. Let's accept that and move on from it. And let us continue to keep building. And I think we have some, oh, sorry, Leo, go ahead. I was going to, oh, you're mute, Leo.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, could just present another follow-up question here, and then I have one as well right after. Could it be from our babyhood or childhood instinct to be rewarded if we keep crying out loud?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure. I mean, at least instinctually, evolving from the level of animals to us, we know how to either garner affection or get what we need, our basic needs met. So yeah, maybe some of it could be brought from our childhood. I'm assuming you mean those feelings and emotions. Let me go back to her original question. So the reward system. Okay, yeah. So the reward, yeah. So I mean, obviously, some of that is learned, through our different evolutionary processes, whether it's from when we're an infant, child, so forth and so on, or from different lifetimes. We bring those things that we've learned from the past with us. So inevitably, we know what we need to do to get whatever it is that we need to get, whether it's instinctual or it's conscious that we're doing it.
And I believe Joanna de Angelis also mentions this instinct or this condition, right, of reward. Um, Not exactly in this sense, in the book Gratitude, if I'm not mistaken, The Psychology of Gratitude, that she talks about this connection with the mother, that we are always, not always, but we develop this, yes, just like she said, I cry, guess what? I get something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to look on the other side as well, that you're crying for a reason, and we develop, ought to develop. And I think this is the where how I would connect with the comment that I would like to have you make, or the question, if I can place that way too. Touch on two things that was very interesting towards the end, which was to do something uplifting, something different in your life. And then you talked about this not to be afraid of reconstruct ourselves, right? There are two things, two part of the questions. When do I find out, or how do I find out that I'm not perfect? Well, I'm not saying we all know that we're not perfect, but that I need to reconstruct myself. And if I do find it, how do I do it? Much like a new test that we'll do, or perhaps a project that we do at home, we don't know how to complete that project, how to even start it, right? So those are two-part questions there. When we find out that we need to reconstruct ourselves, and how do we do it, and how do we start? Sometimes we don't have the tools, right?
Mm-hmm. So when do we find out? Well, I'd say oftentimes when we've hit a wall and are experiencing pain, then we realize, uh-oh, something I'm doing is not working. So I need to really redo this. I need to rethink what I'm doing here. So I'll give this analogy. So recently, as some people might be aware, we've been redoing our daughter's bedroom. So we've been learning new things. And so, and learning through trial and error and putting holes in the walls or fixing holes in the walls and realizing doing this much spackle versus that much spackle makes a difference. So you kind of through trial and error, you just kind of realize, wait a second, this didn't work, this works better. So I think that's a lot of trial and error, right? And we live in the planet that's trials and expiations. It's not by chance. Because unless we're having someone come to us and say, look, here are all the things you need to work on, which who's doing that? Nobody. It's oftentimes our own mentor, nudging us saying, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you focus on your spirituality? Why don't you meditate? Why don't you eat something healthy? Why don't you think about the good things or what have you? So, and this question has been asked many times before. It's kind of like, what do I even know what to work on? Well, work on what's bothering you the most right now. Whatever's coming up the most, that's most bothersome. Start there. There's no wrong or right answer when it comes to working on ourselves, whether it's self-evaluation or self-reflection. There's no wrong place to start, if you will. And how do we do it? I mean, the actual ins and outs of how we do it, I think it's going to differ from person to person because, as the saying goes, different strokes for different folks. So, what works for me is not going to work for you, vice versa, because we're just different people and everybody's different. So that's part of the journey. That's part of the investigative process of getting to know ourselves is, okay, what's going to work for me? What's not? And the only way to find that out is to try. Okay, let me try. Like a good friend of mine, not spiritist. She is a big workout person, like extremely fit, like just really, great person, but just like really into working out and really being fit. So, and she began to experience postpartum depression. And she contacted me and we were talking and she said, Kirsten, I did everything. I changed she said, I'm already eating really healthy. So it wasn't that. So I went harder at the gym. That didn't help. And I did X and I did Y. I did all these other things. And she said, I tried everything and none of the things are working. So I started doing therapy. That started to help. I started having to take medication. That helped. Low dose. And I started just to cultivate my spirituality. And I downloaded this app that you've been telling me about and XYZ and doing this and, all different other kinds of things that she had started to do that she had not done before because she had said for a long time, working out was her thing. That always had been the source of like the source of, not the source, the way to fix all her problems, if you will. But now she finds herself in a new realm of life, in her mid to late 20s. So, you begin to discover different parts of yourself that come up. And so it's self-discovery is the process of trial and error, of figuring out what works and what doesn't, discarding what's not working for you and trying something else.
Great answer, Kirsten, and it is helpful because sometimes we get to that point that it's like, oh, I cannot learn, right? Or I'm too
Yeah,
old for this, or
no
or we
such
don't want
thing.
to change. And it goes back to what Yasko was asking. Maybe we're getting a reward just by saying such a thing, and being stuck is our reward because we don't want to change, right? We don't want to challenge ourselves or allow ourselves to change. We want to live in the old behaviors of the old person, old me. So great inspirational messages, answers, and great questions as well that we had here. I would
Can I
like,
add one other thing, Leo?
sure, please, yes,
Complacency is
yes,
an area of comfort.
yep, yep, it is true.
And
Yeah,
to remain the same is an area of comfort, which in some ways an area of pleasure. Because I know what I know, like the saying goes, which this can be applied to different things, but the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. I'm going to repeat that. The devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. So that's applicable to a lot of things, but it's poorly applicable, or it's applicable in a poor way, to complacency, because I'd rather just stick with what I know, even if it's not good, even if I know I'm not happy, even if I'm unhealthy. My doctor's telling me I'm unhealthy. My lab work is telling me I'm unhealthy. My therapist is telling me I'm unhealthy. My kids all hate me. My neighbors hate me. My dog hates me, and my cat. And I don't know if that's good or bad, because cats are what they are. But it's like there's so many things around us that are calling our attention that really we should be saying, hold on a second. I think something's wrong. Something might be going on here. Things aren't going so well. Let me take a step back and do an evaluation, like what's going on here and what am I, as our dear friend Paula Schmidt always says, what is the lesson? What is the lesson? What am I supposed to be learning here? So that's all I had to add.
No, great, thank you. Yes, it reminds me of like the new tasks at work, right? That you don't know how to even start, as we were saying earlier, but it's that place of complacency that you're like, oh, okay, do I really have to do this? Well, guess what? Once you get your hands on it, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be, changing, and it's just after you're done, you're like, well, you know what? I thought it was going to be much harder than this, but if you truly embrace it, it can be much easier than we thought, right? So great, thank you. As we were saying earlier, I wanted to also say, you're welcome and thank you for being here, as Kirsten has already said, for all the thank yous that we received. For you, Kirsten, great message and presentation from Ozaura. Marisa saying again, I love that. I guess it was one of your comments. Antonia saying hello too. Anika saying beautiful ideas and reflections. Thank you, Kirsten. So it's always good to connect. And one of the things that we always like to share is this, the fact that we're not alone, right? We have like minds, like hearts that they're always, looking for encouraging messages that's, as we study here with Joanna de Angelis, and all the other authors too, and mediums that we bring here. We would like to kind of finalize our Saturday, but before we do so, Kirsten, I would like to invite you to say the final prayer. But before, I would like to say to everyone that next Saturday, we'll have a guest speaker, Julio Padovan, who will be talking about spiritual relationships in suicide context. Again, Julio Padovan talking about spiritual relationships in suicide context. Unfortunately, we will not be streaming this online through YouTube or Facebook. So if you would like to watch the talk and to participate, please contact us. Let us know that you would like to participate, and we will share with you the link for our Zoom meeting. So again, this is not going to be streamed. If you would like to participate, let us know, and we'll be sending you the Zoom link. So on that note, thank you again, Kirsten. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And we would like just to pass the word back to you so you can say our final prayer, and have a good week, everyone.
We lift our minds to our divine creator and our beloved Master Jesus. As we long for our heart to be close to yours, to bring that beautiful kingdom of heaven that you always spoke of, close to our hearts and our minds. We pray and ask that you continue to bestow upon us your love, your mercy and kindness through the hands of our mentors who inspire us, and through the healing hands when we receive the spiritual passes from the spirit doctors, nurses, and workers of love and light. But we take this very important moment, dear Creator, to pray not just for ourselves, but for those who are experiencing a lot of turbulence in their lives, a lot of trials, temptations, hardships, emotional stress, illnesses. Let their hearts be comforted. Let the hearts of mothers and fathers who lose their children or who have to witness their children go through different illnesses. We pray for all those who are in our hearts or in our book of prayers at the SSB, and pray for all those that are going through suffering in this moment as we speak, across the globe or close to home. And we pray for those who oversee nations, for them to be inspired, for the leaders' hearts to be touched and be reminded of their purpose of goodness. And with Jesus on our mind and in our hearts, we thank you, and so be it.